Everyone expected the Hells Angels to take revenge, but they returned her missing dog instead. There is a street in Bakersfield, California, that most people in the neighborhood try to avoid walking down after dark. Not because anything terrible has happened there, but because of the building at the corner, a low, flat-roofed place with blacked-out windows, a chain-link fence, and a row of motorcycles parked outside that could stretch halfway down the block on a busy night. Everyone in the area knows who it belongs to, and everyone, without ever saying it out loud, has decided that whatever goes on behind that fence is none of their business. Linda Kowalski had lived 2 blocks from that building for 11 years. She was a night shift nurse at the county hospital, the kind of woman who kept her porch light on and left water bowls outside for strays. She had a small backyard with a broken fence panel she kept meaning to fix, a job that left her too tired to fix it, and a dog named Biscuit, who had been her closest companion for the past 7 years. Biscuit was a beagle mix, sand-colored and scruffy, with one ear that flopped forward and one that stood straight up, and a brown patch over his left eye that made him look like he was always squinting at something suspicious. He was deaf in one ear. He snored. He once ate an entire stick of butter off the kitchen counter and looked deeply unbothered about it. Linda loved him the way you love something that has been there for you on the worst nights, when no one else was. The night he disappeared was a Thursday. Linda had come home from a double shift just before 7 in the morning. She went straight to the kitchen to make coffee, called Biscuit's name toward the back of the house, and heard nothing. That was unusual. He always came running at the sound of the door. She checked every room, checked the yard, found the back gate swinging open on its hinge. The fence panel had finally given way. She walked the block twice. She knocked on Pete's door. Pete was her retired neighbor who had installed security cameras on every corner of his house after a package got stolen 2 years ago. He let her inside without a word and pulled up the footage on his laptop. They both watched in silence as a small, sand-colored shape trotted confidently across the screen, crossed the empty lot beside the hardware store, slipped between 2 parked motorcycles, and disappeared behind the chain-link fence at the corner. Pete closed the laptop. He didn't look at her right away. She went home, sat down at the kitchen table, and didn't touch her coffee. She thought about calling animal control. She thought about calling the police. She thought about walking up to that fence and knocking. Each time she got close to deciding, something in her chest tightened, and she pulled back. The stories she had heard over the years, half of which she had probably invented herself, filled in from rumors and news stories and the general weight of a reputation, sat heavy in her mind. She told herself she would wait until evening. Maybe he would just come back on his own. By noon, the neighborhood group chat was buzzing. Someone had seen her putting up flyers. Someone else had seen the camera footage. Pete had shown his wife, who had mentioned it to someone, the way these things always travel. The messages came in one after another, people offering sympathy, people offering advice. And underneath all of it, the thing nobody was quite saying directly, but that everyone clearly meant, don't go near that corner. Linda read the messages and put her phone face down on the table. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was what had actually happened on the other side of that fence. Ray was the one who found him. Ray was 52 years old, broad-shouldered, with a gray beard he had been growing since the late 90s, and hands that had spent decades working on engines. He was the chapter's road captain, which meant he handled logistics, which also meant he was usually the one awake earliest and staying up latest. That particular Thursday night, he had been out in the yard at around midnight, grilling chicken thighs on the old gas grill they kept near the side wall, when he heard a sound near the gate. He turned around. There was a small dog sitting 4 feet away, looking up at him with the particular calm of an animal that has decided a situation is fine and is simply waiting for the humans to catch up. Ray stared at the dog for a long moment. The dog stared back. Ray pulled a piece of chicken off the grill, blew on it, and tossed it over. Biscuit caught it without moving his feet. By morning, the dog had made his way through most of the building. He slept for a while against the leg of a man named Deke, the chapter president, 61 years old. Quiet, in the way that people are quiet when they have lived a lot, and stopped feeling the need to explain themselves. Deke woke up, looked down, and said nothing. He reached down and scratched behind the dog's ear. The dog's back legs started going. At breakfast, someone noticed the tag. It was a small metal disc on a worn leather collar, the kind of thing you stop reading after a few years because you assume nothing will ever actually happen. Deke held it under the light. There was a name and an address, 2 blocks away. Nobody made a big speech about it. Nobody called a meeting. They gave the dog a bath in the utility sink. He tolerated this with the resigned dignity of an animal who has been through worse. And someone found an old towel that became his immediately. They fed him again. Someone gave him a piece of sausage. Someone else tried to give him a piece of toast and he sniffed it and looked away, which got a laugh from the 3 men watching. Deke finished his coffee, set down the mug, and stood up. He said, "Let's take him home." 4 of them rode out. Ray drove the sidecar bike, an older model they used for longer runs, and they put Biscuit in the sidecar on a folded blanket. The dog sat upright the entire ride, ears moving in the wind, looking around like he was conducting an inspection of the neighborhood. Linda was on her front steps when she heard them coming. She had been up for almost 30 hours by that point. She had the leash in her hand, though she wasn't sure why, some part of her still hoping he would just turn up on his own. When the sound of the engines reached her, she felt the familiar tightening in her chest. She stood up slowly. Then she saw the sidecar. She was across the yard before she fully understood what she was looking at. Biscuit was already straining forward, his whole back half wagging. She dropped to her knees on the sidewalk, and he was on her, licking her face, making the small, urgent sounds he always made when she had been gone too long. She held on to him and didn't say anything for a while. Ray was the one who spoke. He had his helmet under his arm, and he kept his voice low, the way people do when they don't want to intrude on something that isn't theirs. He said, "He ate good. Don't worry about that." Deke gave a single nod. Then he turned and walked back to his bike. The others followed. No one asked for thanks. No one left a number. They pulled away from the curb slowly and turned at the end of the street. And by the time Linda had gotten properly to her feet, they were already gone. She stood there on the pavement with Biscuit in her arms and looked at the empty street for a moment. Then she noticed one of her flyers still stapled to the telephone pole at the corner. She walked over to look at it. Someone had written across the bottom in black marker, just a few words, in handwriting she would never be able to place. "Found safe. Eat something." She took the flyer off the pole and carried it inside. It ended up on the refrigerator, between a school photo and an old grocery list. It stayed there for years. The neighborhood found out in pieces, the way neighborhoods always do. Pete told his wife the full version. His wife mentioned it at the laundromat. A teenager who had seen the motorcycles roll slowly past told her friends. By evening, the group chat had gone strangely quiet, which in its own way said more than any message could. Not everyone changed how they thought about the building at the corner. Some people kept their distance the same as before. That's how it goes. A single morning doesn't undo years of distance. But something had shifted in the way the story sat. It didn't feel as simple anymore. It didn't have the easy shape that rumors usually have. Pete started lifting a hand when bikes went past his house. He wasn't sure exactly when he started doing it. It just felt like the right thing. Linda never went to the clubhouse to say thank you in person. She thought about it more than once. She was never quite sure what she would say, or whether they would want her to come. So instead, one Saturday morning before it was fully light outside, she walked down the block with a plate of food she had been cooking since 4 in the morning. The kind of meal you make when you want to say something but words feel too small. And left it on the low brick wall just outside the fence. When she walked past later that afternoon, the plate was gone. She decided that was enough. Ray still has a photo on his phone from that night. It is a picture of Biscuit asleep on the floor of the clubhouse, wedged between 2 pairs of boots, looking like he has lived there his entire life. Ray doesn't post it anywhere. But sometimes, when he meets someone who seems like they need their assumptions shaken a little, he shows it to them without saying much. He lets them look. He watches their face shift. Deke never brought the morning up again. That wasn't unusual for him. He has a long private list of things he has done without making a point of it. Small repairs, quiet help, the kind of thing that doesn't fit the story people have already decided to tell about him. He doesn't feel any particular need to correct the story. He just keeps adding to the list. And Biscuit. Biscuit went back to his regular life. He slept in the same spot at the foot of Linda's bed. He knocked the same water bowl over every morning, reaching for it. He sat by the back door and stared at the yard, waiting for squirrels that never came close enough. He had no way to understand what any of it meant, the fence or the motorcycles or the morning ride in the sidecar with the wind on his face. He just knew he had been fed well, and that he was home now, and that Linda smelled like relief. Which, for Biscuit, was more than enough.